And welcome to this. This is the very first episode of the Horror Timelines podcast. I figured I'd do something a little bit different because the format that I chose for the channel kind of doesn't allow me to talk about everything that I want to talk about. So this is kind of fun because it opens up the whole world of horror and for me to talk about any different things. If I want to talk about a specific movie, if I want to talk about a specific genre, if I want to talk about just a topic, I can have as many guests as I want. I do have a guest today. I actually have Christy with me, the movie timeline wife.
Hi.
And we are going to be talking today about a very specific movie because the other day I discovered something pretty wild. What did I discover?
I had never seen the movie Tremors.
And that is just crazy to me. Because it is now, it's, 30 years old now.
Yeah.
And came out in 1990. And understand, Tremors is probably one of my favorite movies of all time. It's easily in my top 10. I saw it in the theater when it came out, and it basically impacted my life. Lots of people keep on requesting me to do the Tremors timeline, and I've been savoring it to do something a little bit more in-depth and pretty special. And there is a video for that coming out in October when the new movie comes out. There's a Tremors 7.
That's crazy.
Would you like to guess where they are?
In space?
No, they're not in space. I do feel like we're not far away from seeing the Graboids in space. They're on a desert island.
Oh.
On a tropical island.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, sand and everything. I think it makes sense.
That kind of makes sense.
A little known fact that I don't think I've even ever said this out loud, but when I was younger, I had a Tremors movie plotted out. Like, I had a whole script concept, and the whole thing took place like on a beach in a beach town.
Oh.
And it was like people were up on the boardwalk trying to get away and everything, but it was going through the sand and everything and coming up through the boardwalk. That was my whole exciting concept that I had for the Tremors movies at the time. But so what we're talking about today is the impact of this movie, and I think personally, like, what makes it so good, and obviously Christy's first impressions with this, because so you've never seen this before. What did you think?
I really liked it. I thought it was really enjoyable. It was super entertaining. It made me like Kevin Bacon more. Not that I didn't like him, but you know,
he does basically steal that movie.
Yeah. And the other guy too. The other guy's really good too.
Fred Ward.
Yeah.
Fred Ward, Remo Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah. The adventure begins. Fred Ward. The crazy thing is at the time of that movie coming out, Fred Ward was probably a bigger star than Kevin Bacon was. That was when Kevin Bacon was kind of still a new name.
Yeah.
I think he had kind of broken out a bit, but he wasn't like the Kevin Bacon we know and love now.
But wasn't it after Footloose?
It was after Footloose, yeah, but like Footloose was like his big break.
Yeah.
And then but he was still like, he wasn't like an A-list.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not like the most serious movie.
What, Footloose isn't serious?
I don't think people were like writing articles about his acting skills based on his dance at the end.
Wow. But that is one thing that I'll say that I think that is just amazing about this movie, because not only do you have Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward as basically your heroes of the movie. And again, if you're listening to this, I'm assuming that you've probably seen Tremors. If you haven't, we might be talking about some spoilers here, obviously, so I think everything about my channel is spoiler anyway, so if you see the word Tremors, we're going to be talking about the plot pretty extensively and the characters and the ending and such. So I suppose if you haven't seen Tremors for some reason, like Christy, you might want to go watch that before listening to this. But not only did you have Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward as your front characters, as your heroes of the film, but you had every single character in there that was just these great little character actors with great roles. Obviously, Michael Gross stole the show.
Yeah. And Reba McEntire, too. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I don't know a lot about her as a performer, but she was good.
Yeah, no, they were a great combo, and obviously Michael Gross left an impact because his character Bert continued on. He's the only actor to appear in all of the Tremors movies. Reba only appeared in this one. Kevin Bacon only appeared in this one. Fred Ward did actually show back up for part 2.
I mean, I think one of the reasons that the movie is so entertaining and is so enjoyable is that the characters are written very well. Like, even the kid that's supposed to be douchey.
Melvin?
Yeah. Is, like, a reasonable amount of brat. Like, a normal bratty for his age. It's not, like, over the top or annoying. The characters don't argue. They actually...
Wait, can we talk about Melvin for a second? Because when Melvin first showed up on screen, you asked me if he was somebody else. Do you remember you asked me if it was who it was? You said, is that?
I can't remember.
Oh, you asked me if it was Wayne from...
Oh, yeah, he does look like Wayne.
Yeah. Well, and I think almost the testament, because, like, you immediately thought that he was probably one of the most single douchey characters.
Yeah. But even Wayne is, like, a reasonable douchey character. Yeah. It's a relatable douche.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh my god, where did this kid come from? It's just a kid that age.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
He looks a lot like that. He looks a lot like that kid, and that kid was notorious for just playing, like, jerky 80s kids. Because, I mean, he was the... this is totally off topic, because Wayne was not in Tremors, but he was the kid at the ending of Pee-wee's Big Adventure with the...
Oh, Wayne
with the bike.
Was?
Yeah. But anyhow, the kid that plays Melvin... is definitely much more of a character actor. I don't think he really broke it big. I'm looking at his IMDb right now, and of course the thing he's the most known for is Tremors, but he was also apparently in Pearl Harbor as a sailor, and he was in Can't Hardly Wait as Homeboy number 2.
Oh.
So obviously Tremors was kind of his big thing, but my favorite character, mainly just because of other things, is Walter Chang. Because he played probably one of my other favorite characters from one of my other favorite, maybe top 10 movies. He played Egg Shen from Big Trouble in Little China. And he was just very memorable in that. And I thought he actually did a really good job on this, because he doesn't have a ton of screen time in this.
Yeah.
But his character's pretty well defined and slick.
Yeah. They all are. They're good, but their interactions are what make the movie enjoyable.
Yeah.
Like, I was never annoyed with the characters or saying why would they do that, or why aren't they just focusing on the monsters, or what is even happening. Like, it was very streamlined. I don't know.
Yeah.
I appreciated that.
Well, it definitely, like, from a script standpoint, it does a lot with very little, because again you have this very narrow setting, because you're just in this tiny town with like 3 buildings, and everything else is just these big expanses of desert. And that's another thing, is the scenery in this film, and I know I said this when we were watching the movie, is that I personally feel like the setting of the film is a character, because you had this big valley with the mountains in the background, and obviously by the ending of the movie the point is to get out of the valley and get to those mountains, and it just, that landscape with the rocks obviously plays a huge part of the story, because every single bit of the ground it's like you're swimming in the water with a shark.
Yeah.
And like, you got to get to those rocks, and that's your safe haven. And it just became this extra detail of character that was just really well handled.
And you know, I mean, I think even 30 years ago, it's really hard to set somewhere up that feels isolated and that's believably isolated. And that, I mean, it's like they even with like the big expanses of land, it still felt claustrophobic. You still felt like, oh my god, they can't get out. Yeah. And they're isolated.
Yeah.
You know, which that's hard to do.
Right. And they did a good job of like of taking care of that, because again, like, just even in the opening bit, like in the first like 5 minutes of the movie, you have this scene where Val and Eleanor are out in the middle of nowhere, and they drive their car onto this like dirt road.
Yeah.
And he says the line is freeway.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a really great job of establishing within the first 5 minutes that this is such a remote area that this little crappy dirt road is a freeway.
And I also appreciate how well it has held up from a time standpoint. Yeah. Because I feel like you could set this now and it would be okay that their cell phones didn't work, or that they you know what I mean? Like, that being blocked, it's believable, and
they do a good job.
It ages well.
They do a good job with kind of hanging a lampshade on that halfway through whenever they're talking about the CB radios. Yeah. And Walter says, like, you know, the signal can't get through the mountains in the valley, which is, again, it's a great little bit of like establishing them as being cut off. But yes, if you did set that today, obviously cell phones, that would be, you know, the classic movie. No signal. I get no bars here. But you wouldn't even need that because these characters have all lived there for so long, none of them would have had. Yeah, it feels timeless, if that makes sense. Like, it really does. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that as a costume designer, you have to note that those outfits, like, don't look dated because they just feel very, like, middle of nowhere America.
Well, I mean, the weird part of costume design is if it's really good, it's not noticeable. And this is one of those movies where it's not, and that means they've done their job. You know, if it's not period or something specific, and you can watch the movie without anything standing out, then they did their job very well, which I think they did.
Yeah, but if I can actually point out too that I think that they had those like little things, like obviously the fact that Val constantly wears a cowboy hat, you know, even though he's just like a handyman out in the middle of nowhere, it obviously shows like his kind of persona that he has.
Yeah, well, he also wears like big belt buckles and like he has that whole like I'm a rancher look.
Well, and then you have Bert, who obviously is has very like camo-ish looking gear and very utilitarian.
Yeah, I mean,
wears that military vest.
It's a good practice and a good example of costume designing that completely suits the movie and doesn't take any attention away from everything else. Yeah. Which is a tricky thing to do, because it's very easy to make, you know, somebody like Bert, you know, completely, if you just added just like too many pockets or too many things, it would look like, okay, you're just trying to dress somebody up like a survivalist and not what somebody would actually be. So, you know, there's a fine line between just enough and too much, to make it look like a character. So
that's true. It is. It feels very reserved. And hey, speaking about being 30 years old, how about those monsters?
Yeah, I mean, and I think I'm assuming you told me that they're all practical effects.
Yeah, they are. The great thing about this is, like, I mean, this is 1990. They shot it in 89. Yeah, this was pre CGI.
And I do appreciate that they're all practical, because I do think CGI, especially at that time, or, you know, around later on that time, it could have just been a mess.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, some of the later Tremors sequels use the CGI to various degrees. Like, there's some really, really shifty CGI in, like, the third and fourth movie, which came out in, like, the late 90s. So that, you know, we saw what happened with that. So it actually made you appreciate just how fantastic that these gigantic practical worms are.
Yeah, and, like, honestly, like, I do feel like, I mean, you use the example of, like, they could be swimming in the water with sharks. Like, I do feel like they could have gone, like, the Jaws route, not showed a lot of it, and it would have still been as impactful, but they showed a lot, and all of it, like, it looks really good. It looks super, like, okay, these worms just live in the ground and they're gonna just eat everybody.
Yeah. Well, and they did a great job too, because again, talking about the later movies. So one of the things, again, if you haven't seen Tremors, they're these gigantic underground worms, and their mouths open up, and they have these 3 snake-like tongue things that basically shoot out of their mouths, and they like grab things and pull them in, which is why they call them graboids. And what's crazy is when you're watching these movies like all in a row, like when you watch multiple ones and you watch the later ones, which are done cheaper and obviously not as high level of skill behind the camera, when you see one of the snake things come out and like grab something, it's very apparent that it's a hand puppet. Like it's a guy wearing like this thing, and like the mouth is being controlled, and it looks like a hand puppet. And rewatching the first one, I realized that they used the same technique. It's still just a hand puppet, but it was just the way they shot it and the way it was done was just smoother and cleaner, and you don't notice it. Like
no,
the fact that I would
never have known that. And, I mean, you just said it. That's the first time I even thought it. So, I mean, I would have never, if you never said that, I would have just thought that they actually built these big things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, and it's great because, again, like, I think that you never think about it as being, it doesn't look like a big, like, clunky effect. It looks good.
I mean, it's the same lines is what we were discussing about costume design, or if it is something that you notice, it takes you out of believing that this is where you are, and the practical effects never take you out of the movie. It never breaks that spell of I'm here in the desert with these people watching it, which when it's done poorly, that's when that's the difference between a good movie and a bad movie.
Well, and I think that like it definitely you see that old school love. One of my biggest complaints about modern monsters in movies, especially ones that are CGI'd, is they all kind of look generic to me. They're all these kind of generic bodies. They all kind of look the same. They all have a very similar texture. I'm going to use the Demogorgon from Stranger Things as an example because it's got this cool like flower mouth thing.
Oh yeah.
And then it's just got this really stock generic like alien monster body.
Yeah.
Like there's really nothing to it. And then even when you take a look at the things from A Quiet Place, it's just basically that same flower mouth from Stranger Things with kind of a generic smooth body. And you look at the graboids and they've got these great textures, they've got these really unique mandibles, they've got these very unique tongue things that each have their, like the mouths, the little mouths of the tongues look really unique to the creature.
Yeah. And
its skin is like 3 different textures. It just looks, it's very involved, thought out. It just looks more natural.
Yeah.
And it's distinctive. I mean, if you were to like show part of the graboid, you'd know what it was. I mean, if you show part of, like, say, the Cloverfield monster, I don't know if I could pick out which monster it was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why examples of like things that are different should be more celebrated, because it's really hard to create something without using elements of things that you've been exposed to, because it's hard to do it like you unconsciously do it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, we draw inspiration without
not even knowing, because this is like in your mind, like this is what a monster looks like because you've seen it so many times, so to not only take so much time to make it believable, but to actually make it something we've never seen before, that's a really hard thing to do. And
one of the things I think that came out later was in terms of the genericness of it, like, so when after the 4th Tremors movie, they stopped making them for a long time. It was like at least a 10-year gap, and they finally brought it back with Tremors 5, and they were now in Africa, and they have like a new like breed of graboids that are bigger and they look different, and every time they show them, they have that kind of generic monster look. It completely lost that special like
originality.
Yeah, it just looked more generic.
Yeah.
Although the CGI was actually pretty darn good.
I don't think I need to see any of the other movies.
Oh, but how would you know what their life cycle is like?
I don't think I need to know.
Well, I'll tell you. I'm about to tell you. Because it's crazy. Because the second movie, you find out that the big worms explode open.
Yeah.
And inside, they give birth.
Oh.
And they give birth to 3 smaller ones called shriekers.
Oh.
And the shriekers are really dumb.
Okay.
And they hunt by heat.
Okay.
And they walk on the ground. Yeah. And then those guys, they'll shed their skin and they'll become what are known as ass blasters.
Okay.
And ass blasters have wings. And they can actually shoot, like, carbon from their belly. And they'll like, launch up into the air and they can fly.
Oh.
And then the ass blasters lay eggs. And then those eggs become the big ones. They hatch into the big ones.
So, that's a lot.
That is a lot. Oh, and then for some reason in one of the movies they introduced the fact that the African version of them, the tongue like detaches. I don't know how that works. They don't actually show how it works, but the snake things are separate creatures.
It's so dumb.
Yeah, it gets a little wonky. I will discuss all of that in my timeline.
Yeah. I'm okay with just seeing the first one because it was so good.
The first one is really good. You know, like, can we talk about just script-wise about how great the first one is, because it does so much in such a little time.
Well, I think it's one of, for me at least, it's an example of just a very streamlined and concise and organized script, if that makes sense. Like, anytime I would ever think about writing something, it just seems like such a big thing to do, like a big idea cloud. And some people can like pull that down and just put it together and just not waste a word, not waste a minute, and actually just have something that, you know, is paced right, timed right, feels right, and doesn't feel scattered. And I think this is one of those movies, which unfortunately there's not a lot. There's more you know, scattered movies, like I sound right now. Scattered script, I should say. Unorganized, you know. But it's just one of those, it's just a perfect little package, you know?
Well, and even just the way that the whole, like, the events unfold. Because at first it's like, you don't know what's up, you just know that there's something underground.
Yeah.
You know that, like, you find out very early that they'll wait for you because you got the guy up in the tower who's afraid to come down. And then you get the reveal of the snake. Because the first time that you see the snake is when they find the severed one that's on the back of a truck.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes the whole thing of like there's these snakes on the ground. And then of course you get the big reveal of the graboid coming up out of the ground and that the snakes were actually just a part of it. And that, just the way that unfolds, if you watch this movie without knowing anything about it and without knowing what the creatures look like, without seeing the trailer, of knowing that they're these big things, then it's a pretty fun reveal, the way it's handled.
Yeah, I like that. Like, there are so little movies, such a small amount of movies that I could actually say there was no point in the movie where, like, if I went back to watch it, where I'd be like, God, I hate this part, or oh, wait, just get through this and then it will get better. You know, it's very even. Yeah. and I guess paced well. I don't know.
No, it's paced really well because it's just term. It's just like the craziness of this movie doesn't start until like about halfway through. You know, when you get the first, like, the craziness to me starts with the whole, when the first time that it pops up out of the ground and you have the showdown with the cement wall where they kill the first one.
Yeah.
That's when the movie just becomes a roller coaster ride. But before that, it's still evenly paced because you've got the incident with, old Fred and his lambs. You've got Edgar up in the tree. You've got the dock at his place. There's like all these little incidences that kind of pace it out. So it's never boring.
No, like I said, there's no wasted time. You know, which I think that's such a hard thing to do. You know.
Yeah, Well, and especially because, like, if I were to tell you script-wise that there's a scene where the guys try to leave town, but then they find a dead guy, so they come back. So then they try and leave town again, and they find a dead guy, so they come back. So they try and leave town again, but they find the dead construction workers, so they come back. When I say that, it sounds monotonous and it sounds boring.
Yeah. And when you add in that it's the same location the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like, how is this even going to work?
Right.
But it does.
And I think it works by escalation, because it's like they find just Edgar dead up in a tower. It seems unusual, but not crazy. And then the next up, you find old Fred dead, so now it's actually a murder.
Yeah.
So now it's even crazier, and then the next time you go, you're just completely cut off. It's just, they escalated it up there, and it just almost became like a like a motif more than anything else, and it just really heightened it up. And it made it, I did not feel bored at all in that. I think it just handles it really well.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of my strong points of why I like it.
I've seen this movie so many times now that I actually do have nitpicks.
Yeah.
Even though they are minor. But for some reason, and this has bothered me probably since the very first time I saw the movie. I don't know why this bothers me so much. But you have the Doc and his wife, and they're building this house out in the middle of nowhere. You know, and they're building it from the ground up. And they have the generator there, and the generator goes missing. And the wife says, maybe it fell down in one of the mines. There's a lot of mines around here. And all I can think about is, that probably should have been something you should have checked out before you decided to dig and build a house right there. Like, it's just like, if there's just a bunch of random mines that your generators are falling into, maybe you should not, like, dig a foundation and build a house right there?
That's a nitpick.
Oh, this is a complete nitpick, but
because she's just trying to figure it out.
I know, but it just always makes me laugh, and when I see that scene, it just always sticks out. And I do have, like, I have little minor instances of about the graboids' abilities, because sometimes they're really fast, and other times, you know, they're just fast enough, you know, as the script needs them to be.
Yeah.
Because they can rocket really fast. But if there's a little girl on a pogo stick and Kevin Bacon needs to beat the monster there, he's going to beat the monster there.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's varying speeds there, and just like how sometimes it can detect the sound a little bit better than others.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the acoustics are like underground. I mean...
You haven't tested that?
Mm-mm.
I think we got to test that and figure out how the graboids can hear all that. But, it's just for me too. Like, even though I have, I think the only reason why I have nitpicks is because I've seen this enough times. I've seen this enough times that I could probably sit down right now and I could just start at the beginning and tell you what happens in the first scene and go on from there. And so obviously, when you've seen a movie that many times, like, you start to pull little.
Yeah, of course.
But an interesting thing about this movie is that it's kind of turned into sort of an everybody-ish kind of movie. And do you know who really loves the Tremors movies? Gun fanatics.
Well, yeah, because you have Bert. Yeah,
and apparently, and again, if you've watched my channel, if you've like listened to me talk, you know that I don't know anything about guns. It's just not my territory. It's not my. I don't know anything about them. I've never owned a gun. I don't know anything about them. But there are a lot of people out there that they know guns. They know everything about guns, and it's like you watch movies and people will complain about, oh, well, that shouldn't have that. And I do know enough that when I see somebody in a movie with a 6-shooter, and they're like firing off like 10 rounds, like, I do know enough to be like, that's weird. But that's about all I know. But apparently people that really know guns say that the way that the guns are portrayed in this movie and the way that Bert and Heather handle them is actually extremely accurate.
Which I would totally believe. Because, like, for a movie to hit this level of, like, concise, not annoying, smoothly paced, just, like, almost like a perfect formula, it's because the people doing it cared.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious that they cared. And I can't even tell what budget level it is.
It just feels like that they have a lot of love for these characters, because every single character has their details fleshed out, and even like side characters. Like one of the things I noticed on this rewatch, more so than I think I ever did before, was you have this side character, Miguel. He's kind of like the older Latino man in town. He makes a point at one time by saying that some of his cattle are dead, so he's obviously a local cattle rancher. His character is just kind of there, but he's actually the one that has a lot of the good ideas. Like, he's the one that comes up with them taking the horses into town. He's the one that comes up with them using the tractor to distract them. So he kind of has a couple of these big aha moments of just like what they're going to do next, and he's a side character. And even like the little quirky character, just even the construction crew guys, you know, they even have like a little comedy bit with them to kind of give them a little extra. They're not just like these stock basic dudes. I mean, the guys have like what, a minute and a half of screen time.
Yeah.
But they kind of give them a little bit extra quirk.
Some character.
Yeah, just a little bit extra detail. It just made everybody feel more real.
Yeah, it's very authentic.
Yeah.
I think. And fun. It's very fun.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we didn't talk about is the actual monsters. Not what they look like. We talked about what they look like. But we didn't talk about how smart they were.
Oh, yeah. Well, that is... And I think that's one of the things that, like, is pretty memorable about this, is that, yeah, the graboids, they learn.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't think that they have them do anything that's, like, too unusual.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, they have them trying to figure out what's going on. Like, okay, well, I know that these people are here.
Yeah.
Let me try and figure this out.
Yeah.
And as soon as they figure out that they can tear a house down.
Yeah. Or pull a car.
Yeah.
Into the ground and.
Yeah. It's like they don't make them. It's done in a way that's kind of nice, because they are smart, but like they didn't make them so smart that it would be like.
No, I mean, I wouldn't like give them a driver's license. Like...
Well, thank goodness, because they have no eyes.
Yeah, I mean.
But no, I mean, like they had like it everything that they do that's like intelligent.
Yeah. Makes
sense for something that lives underground to try and figure out.
Yeah, but it added another element of fun to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, okay, well, what are they going to do? Like, how are they going to foil their plan now? You know?
And it's great, because, I mean, you have these creatures, and it's kind of like they keep one-upping it.
Yeah.
So, it kind of just develops them. They become less characters. And in terms of that, too, I also like it, since we're talking about characters and the monsters, they did a pretty good job of establishing Stumpy.
Yeah.
So one of the creatures' arm gets torn. Well, his the tongue thing, the little snake tongue, gets torn off early in the movie, and that's the one that kind of sticks around the longest. And they refer to it as Stumpy because it's got this stump hanging out, and just that.
Yeah.
Just that's all that they needed.
And I like that we knew how many there were.
Yeah. That was a nice little conceit that was written in there, because you've got the seismologist there, which, you know, might be a little convenient.
Yeah, but I mean, it like gave them a goal.
Right.
So, you know, you knew. Right.
Yeah, it is nice, because it does establish there. You know what? One of the things also too that we haven't touched upon that I happen to love is that they never felt the need to explain where they came from.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
I'm totally okay with that.
And I think it has a lot to do with how believable they made the isolation feel.
Yeah.
So you're just like, oh yeah, this shit could happen. I don't know.
Well, I seem to recall, and I would probably have to look this up because I'm almost positive that I remember this. But I think that originally there was a scene where they explained where the graboids came from. Like,
okay.
I think it was actually in the script.
Yeah.
But then they decided that it was better to not. I don't know if it was ever. I don't know if it was ever explained or not. I don't know if it was ever shot or not. Like if they actually filmed it. But I remember reading that in the original film, though, somebody originally came out, and again, I might be quoting this wrong, but I believe that the original plot was there was a government test or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And Gone Wild or whatever like that. But I think they just completely scrapped that part of the script. I don't believe it was ever filmed. So, and they decided to just leave it go where it was unexplained.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think it was needed. And I think it's decisions like that that make scripts like that so tight.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, if you lead off in that way, I don't know, you can get sloppy, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I think that was a good decision.
Yeah, it gives it. I mean, there's a fun little tidbit in there where they're sitting up on the rock and they're trying to figure out where they came from, and they throw out all these theories as to where it came from, and that's all you need.
Yeah.
You know, they throw out all of the possibilities out there, but you didn't need the you ultimately don't need to know where they came from. It's not important.
It's not, and I mean the stories aren't about the monsters and where they came from and what they're going to do. It was about these people surviving and, you know, following through with their plan. Yeah.
Now, I will say that in the later films, they do kind of get into it a little bit. Not so much. They just kind of explain that they've been around, that they're actually, like, they've been around since the dinosaur times. They're just very, very rare. And that their eggs go dormant for very, very long periods of time, so they may not hatch for hundreds of years. So it's kind of explained there, which is fine. Yeah. But you didn't need that in the context of this film. I will tell you this, that because this I don't think we've ever even talked about this, but I think this is pretty interesting, is that the origin of the idea, which is probably something that you know, you would have thought of while we were hiking, is writers of the film were out and about, and they were hiking and they were sitting up on a giant rock, and he just looked down and said, what if there was what if I had to step on this rock because there was a creature down there waiting for me and I couldn't get off. Yeah. And that's literally that concept of taking a hike and sitting there is where that entire script came from at that point. Is that scene where they're stuck up on the rock and have to pole vault out of there is where the whole movie came from.
Yeah, they're really lucky, those long poles.
Those residual boulders and the appropriately length poles were there.
That were just like left. Or were they the seismologists?
You know what,
because she knew they were there.
Yeah.
They might have been. That might make sense.
Well, I'm assuming because that was right by the concrete trench.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm assuming there was construction happening there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You know, I guess it's happened. Happenstance that they were by the boulder that they were on.
It didn't even bother me. Yeah. I don't even know why I'm bringing it up, but because it's, you know, I don't feel like it was one of those situations where it's like, oh, come on, you know, like
magic metal rods.
What, that's there now, you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, it seemed appropriate at the time. I mean, I don't know what's in the desert. Do you know what's in the desert? There might be poles everywhere in the desert.
I mean, people leave shit. I don't know, like throws trash.
Well, you know, I guess that about. I think we've pretty much covered this.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those movies that makes me proud of everybody that worked on it, even though I don't know their names or who they are. They make me feel good about being a human, and they make me feel good about the movie making process. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm very proud of them, and if I ever met them, I would high five them and be like, "That is a tight script, very well executed."
I will always love this movie just because it feels like such a B movie. Like it just feels like something that you should have stumbled upon in a video rental store or something like that. That a movie that it feels like a movie that nobody's ever heard about. That was like this little underground thing, but it wasn't. I mean, it was a rather large budgeted theatrical release, but it felt like one of those kind of silly B movies. But it just did good, and I mean it's crazy because here it is now, 30 years later. There was a point I did want to make. Oh, go for it. Sorry. No, and this might be. I want to hear points. You could cut this out if it doesn't fit because it might be that minimal. But I really appreciate in films
when they don't treat the audience like they're so dumb. And I love how the beginning with the stampede is what clicked in his brain to do it, but it wasn't like it was like a moment that they brought back. Yeah. That wasn't, you're like, oh, okay, we know we're going to use that somewhere later in the script. You know, there was nothing around that. Well,
I know what you're saying. What you're saying is, if it was like the new Joker movie, where Kevin Bacon was standing there, and then it would have a flashback, and it would actually show you Kevin Bacon talking to, like, Val talking to Earl at the beginning of it, like Stampede. Yeah. Oh, we got the Stampede. It's like, and then like show you that flashback of that moment, in case you don't remember when he said Stampede before,
or just like there's I wish I could think of an example right off the bat, but I can't. But there's some movies where you're like, okay, I know that this is going to come into play again later on. Mm-hmm. Like, they make they highlight it too much.
Yeah.
To let you know that, okay, this is something that's going to move the story later on.
Yeah.
We're just, we have to make sure you know right now. And then, later on, flashback and this and that. Because we don't think you have an attention span.
Well, what's funny is the technical term for that is Chekhov's gun. Mm. And that's the technical term in theater. And if you guys aren't familiar with that, what it means is if you introduce a writer named Chekhov said if you introduce a gun in the first act,
then you have to use it in the second.
You have to use it in the second act.
I actually knew that.
Yeah. Now, I have always referred to this.
I never thought of using that in movie terms.
I have had another term for this, and actually, my friend Jeremy and I used to watch really crappy movies all the time when I was younger, and we. Actually, this was probably before I even knew about the phrase of Chekhov's gun, but we referred to that as the lever on the forklift.
Yeah.
And the reason why we called it the lever on the forklift is there was a movie, and I believe it's Carnosaur, and I'm about to rewatch the Carnosaurs for a timeline, so I will reiterate if this is what it is. But there was a scene in the beginning of the movie, and it's so blatant because the guy's like, "You see that button on the forklift right there? Don't ever press that button. Don't ever press that button." Because it will do bad things. And then as soon as he said, and there was a big close up of the button and his finger pointing to it, and as soon as that happens, you just look at it.
It's like somebody's gonna push the button.
Somebody's gonna push that button.
And it's you know, and it's stuff like that. It's like too much attention to something can trigger. And part of it's on purpose, but sometimes they go too far. You know, so again, that's just an example of how well executed that script was, how perfect the script was, and then how well executed that it was. Sorry. I can ramble.
It was a great example of it because when you're watching a movie and he talks about a stampede in the beginning of the movie,
it was like no thought.
It was a joke.
Yeah.
It was just and plus it was a little bit character bit because it lets you know that Val is a Joker.
It's the dichotomy of the relationship. It puts them.
Right, Val is the wannabe cowboy who's a Joker, but Earl, who's been in a stampede, is the real deal. He's an actual cowboy.
Yeah, and he's the alpha.
Right.
You know, and it kind of, it's like a mentor-mentee relationship, if you will.
Right. So not only do you have that scene that is the Chekhov's gun, it's going to set up something for later, but it also reveals character bits, which is just, and
it just doesn't give any, there's no focus on it, which I appreciate.
Well, so what we're saying here is the 1990 Academy Awards were sleeping on Tremors.
What? At least best script. And the coveted best ending.
Oh yeah, best ending. And it also was the best ending though, with the whole "Can you fly?" Come on. Yeah,
that might be my favorite moment in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Kevin Bacon should be very proud of himself.
Well, all right. Well, thanks, guys, listening to us talking about Tremors. I'm glad that Christy finally got to see Tremors.
I am, too. I'm pleasantly surprised at the enjoyment that Tremors has brought into my life this week.
Well, that's about to happen again because we're about to do another one of these podcasts within the next week or so because guess what? Hey, Christy.
What?
Have you ever seen John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness?
I have not.
So we're going to watch Prince of Darkness.
And then you're going to have to listen to it. But you don't really have to. You could turn it off at any time.
But
it's a free country.
But thanks a lot for listening. As always, check out the Movie Timelines YouTube channel. You can comment on the podcast there. You can actually send me emails to the movietimelinesguy@gmail.com. And you can send messages to Christy or I there if you want to let her know how awesome her thoughts on Tremors are.
Yeah. Or how misdirected I am.
Yeah, you can send it
Let
there.
me know.
You can also support the channel, whether the podcast or the videos on Patreon.com at patreon.com/movietimelines, and support it there as well too. But as always, thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you in a little while for another good podcast.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening.